So we were all sitting there, and Srila Prabhupada was looking at all of us, and he picked up a set of beads. And he said, "Whose beads?" So I had recognized they were mine. I said, "They're mine, Srila Prabhupada." And then he turned and he said, "And what is his name?" Because they had the list of names in the book. Aravinda said, "His name is Bhagavat Das." And he looked and he laughed. He said, "Oh, Bhagavat Das." And it was almost as if, like, he knew me or he was waiting for me to come or something. And he said, "Oh, Bhagavat Das." He said, "There are two things. There is the book Bhagavat, and there is the person Bhagavat, those who follow the scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita." He said, "And you are Bhagavat Das, and you shall serve them both." So then he gave me the beads, and he had the beads in his hand. He said, "Now, what are the 4 rules?" I said the 4 rules. And he said, "And how many rounds a day must you chant?" So at the time, I had been chanting 20 rounds a day. As an austerity, I wanted to chant more rounds. So I said, "You're supposed to chant 16 rounds a day, but I am chanting 20. And Prabhupada looked at me and frowned like, "Don't be so egotistical." And then he gave me the beads. And so I had the beads, and I was chanting like this in front of Srila Prabhupada. And then this devotee, he picked up the next beads, and it was Subrata. He said, "Whose beads?" And Subrata said, "Mine." So he went through the thing with him and told him what the name was and all that. And then he went to give him the beads, and he noticed he didn't have neck beads on. So just as Subrata went to get the beads, he took the beads back and said, "Where are your neck beads?" And then he turned and he looked at me. I didn't have neck beads on. And I had the beads like this, and I took my beads and I went like this because I had waited 1.5 years to get initiated, and I didn't want him to take the beads back. So I went like this, and he said, "He has no beads either." But then he didn't chastise us, and he turned to Hridayananda and Aravinda, and he said, and Sridham was also there. And he said, "You're the senior disciples. You know that they can't get initiated without beads. Why don't they have neck beads? They are new, and you are senior, and you have been around, and you know all this. Why don't they have beads?" And so everyone said, we're sorry, we didn't see it. Everyone was so busy because of the lecture and the TV and everything. And so we'll make sure that they have the beads before the fire yagya tomorrow." And so he said, all right. But before fire yagya, they must have beads, neck beads.
So I went into the temple and I noticed that there were lots of pots because the engagement was right after lunch, and usually somebody brings the pots upstairs back to Prabhupada's quarters and washes them, but this time it was a rush. So I offered to bring the pots up to the apartment, and when I got up there, Achyutananda, who was in the kitchen, said, "You're not supposed to be up here unless you're initiated." So I was so embarrassed and so flustered, I didn't know what to do, and I noticed out of the corner of my eye that in Prabhupada's greeting room, he was sitting there. So I didn't know what to say, so I just turned to Prabhupada and said, I didn't mean to say it, but I said, "Oh yes, that's what I came up to talk to you about, initiation." So he was very calm and serene about it, and he said, "Can you follow the principles?" And I said yes, although at that time I only had given up smoking. But I said yes, I could do it. And he said, "All right, you can be initiated in 2 weeks with Bob." And then the day before initiation, I didn't have any beads yet, so I was streaking beads. See, in those days we didn't have tulsi, so we would all buy these red beads at Tandy's hobby store and string them ourselves. And I was asking some of the devotees what was the meaning of initiation, and they were saying, it means that you agree to serve the spiritual master, you accept him as God, and you agree to serve him for the rest of this life and eternally thereafter. Oh, okay. And then I thought I would dress for the occasion since it was a special occasion, so I wore my tight black jeans and black turtleneck shirt. Then at the initiation ceremony, I didn't know Prabhupada's pranam mantra yet. So when he handed me the beads and told me to bow down, I didn't know what to say about being bowed down. So he said Nama, and then I said Nama, and he said Om, I said Om, he said Vishnu Padaya, and in that way we went through the mantra. And then he said, your name is Jadharani, and Jadharani is the original queen in the Jadu dynasty. And Krishna appears in a particular family, although he is eternal, to glorify that family of devotees. And he appears just like the sun. The sun is always there, but it appears in the day and disappears at night. So Krishna appeared like that. So I was honored to get the name.
In the picture Prabhupada's not present, it's in the courtyard of the Krishna Balaram temple. And Satsarup Maharaj performed this fire sacrifice, and then Prabhupada went to his quarters. He gave me the mantra and the danda and so forth, and some instructions to preach. Not so much the taking of sannyas, accepting of sannyas from Prabhupada. This is what led up to it, I think, that is interesting. It's interesting to me, at any rate. That year, 1975, all in 1974, I had been traveling as a brahmachari and preaching throughout America and organizing book distribution. And then I came to Mayapur, and I had no GBC because the fellow who was my GBC in Los Angeles had left, and I had been sent to Australia at the end of 1973, and then in beginning of 74, I went to India at Prabhupada's invitation for his festival. And then I was there, and I thought, what do I do? Should I go back to Los Angeles or what? And I had an idea to organize book distribution in a certain way, and I never asked anybody about it, checked with anybody about it. Ramaswar and I I had the idea, and he and I brainstormed about it. And so, anyway, I went back to America, and I started traveling and preaching and organizing book distribution, without, in effect, any kind of authorization from Prabhupada's leading governing body commissioners. And so by the time 1975 came around, and I came back to Mayapur, the GBC, they called me in and asked me, who is your GBC? And I said, I don't know, I don't have a GBC, I guess. And really, to be honest with you, at that time, I never even thought about it. I didn't even really understand what the GBC was. And I didn't realize you had to have one, and I wasn't really trying to buck the system. It just kind of worked out like that. So they were insisting I had to have one. And to be honest, I thought, I was a little naive, but then I got a little insight. I thought, some of these men, maybe they want me on their party. Because sometimes they could be a little territorial. And so then they made me choose which one I would take if I had to have one. So I picked one who was a little low-key and didn't have a big profile. And they were all quite shocked. Why you picked him? He's not very fired up or something. I think is what they thought. At any rate, they went to Prabhupada, and they used to do that after their meetings, and they would go and all of their resolutions would be read to Prabhupada, and he'd say, yes, this one, adjust that one, this one is not good. So they came to me, they brought up my name, and they said, there's this Tripurari Das, and Prabhupada said, what has he done? They said, well, Prabhupada, with a quiver in their voice, then he doesn't have any GBC, and he's traveling around and raising so much money, and then he cut them off and said, he's distributing my books, he doesn't need a GBC. That was the end of the story. And how I know about it is because 3 of them came to me afterwards, and they apologized to me. I said, they're not apologize to me, you're the GBC. You know, I had respect for them all. But they were nice enough to tell me that Prabhupada said he doesn't need a GBC. So I kind of, in that way, I kind of came directly under Prabhupada in my own mind, and I think in the minds of a number of leading men also. Therefore, they didn't really complain too much when I used to force my way onto the morning walk, or because there I was Prabhupada's main instrument at the time for distributing books. Prabhupada gave me encouraging words along those lines in 1977 when he had fallen ill and the festival was ending in Mayapur and he was going to go to Vrindavan, and then he decided not to go to Vrindavan. So I went to him with Panchadravida Maharaj, and I said, Prabhupada, I'm not interested in going to Vrindavan for the rest of the festival. He said, why not? I said, because you are the festival. And without you, there's no meaning to Vrindavan in the festival there. So you're staying here, I would like to stay here with you. So Prabhupada said, no, you're a preacher. He really appreciated the sentiment. I felt he deeply appreciated it. He said, no, you are a preacher. You should go. So, shortly thereafter then, some other devotees came, and Rameswar came, and he had the first little publication of how many books had been printed in how many languages. So, Prabhupada was so encouraging. There were 64 million books had been distributed to date, and Rameswar was giving the report, so many of us were sitting there. And then Prabhupada dismissed us all.